Sew Vino.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Sew Vino, where I pair my latest makes to my favourite wines. For those of you who don't know, my name is Helen. I am one half of the sporadically updated sewing blog fernandthread.wordpress.com. You can find me on Instagram as @HelenFernandThread with an underscore between each word. I also run a blog called Forgotten Threads, which will soon be being updated with actual content. And that is a fashion and sewing history research project that I'm currently doing through university. Before we start matching wine and makes, let me tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this. So I live in Melbourne. I study at the University of Melbourne, and back in 2016 I did a wine education program with the university. It's a breadth subject that you can do where you go out to their agricultural campus, you learn how to taste wine and you learn about wine. Then I went to the UK and lived in Glasgow for a year. I worked at Oddbins for 6 months and I worked at a restaurant in Glasgow for 6 months. And during that time I was reading a lot about wine. I was trying to get more knowledge. So when I came home I did a WSET level 2, which is it's kind of a sommelier wine knowledge instruction course for those of you who don't know. And then I started working in a winery in the Yarra Valley in Melbourne as well, or just outside of Melbourne. So I'm not a genius at wine. I would say that I'm a sommelier, but like any profession, there are people with years of experience and there are people who are just starting out, so that's kind of where I sit. And similarly with sewing, I've been sewing since I was 18, but I've only been consistently sewing for about 2 years. So again, I'm not a genius, I'm a little bit lazy, I don't do things perfectly, but I know what I like and I know what I like with wine. So the idea of this vlog series is to match the two together, have a bit of fun and just kind of get involved with the community a bit more. So for the first episode of Sew Vino, I thought we would tackle a make and a wine that are both traditional in some aspects, or old-fashioned, should we say. So what should we start with? I think given that I'm wearing very boring clothes right now, we should probably start with the make. By the way, what I am wearing, so this is my first Agnes top just from some stretch I found. And then this skirt is a little 60s skirt that I have blogged about, so I'll link that in the description box below as well. But what I have made for you today, so both of these are going to be traditional but with a fun twist, like a pop of something interesting. So the traditional element of my sewing is that I'm making a vintage re-release pattern. So this, if you can't see it, is Simplicity 1284. I have made version, I think it's D, yeah, D. So that's this long coat here, which is sleeveless, and basically the design features of this coat are that it doesn't have any fastenings at the front. It has darts at the top and the neckline and darts at the back on the neckline. And then it's very simple, it's just 3 pieces. So yeah, so 1960s pattern, a little bit traditional, a little bit old-fashioned, but as you're about to see, I haven't made it look old-fashioned at all. Okay, so we've got the coat. So by now you'll have seen a little shot of me standing up wearing this. So some details of this beautiful coat. I'm saying coat, it's really not a coat. It doesn't have sleeves, it's not that warm, it's not really a coat, but vest, longline vest I suppose. Anyway, so the fabric that I've used is a cotton drill from Ikea. I think it's still available. I've seen quite a few people making stuff out of this recently. I was inspired by, I can't remember the Instagram name, but I'll put her somewhere in the description box or show notes. She made a trench coat from this as well, which was just beautiful. So I kind of copied her. So yeah, Ikea cotton drill, and then I have lined it with this fabric which I bought years ago from the Clear It warehouse in Melbourne, which is just like a discount clothing store that includes some fabric as well. It's all, the fabric is all off the roll from companies that have decided not to use it or that they've had left over at the end of the season. I left the sleeves off of this one because I wasn't sure what season I would wear it in. Like if this was a raincoat fabric, I would wear it all the time, but it's not a raincoat fabric, so it's not useful. So I thought it's too cold for winter anyway. I might wear it in spring or autumn if I've got like a jumper on underneath, or I might just wear it in summer. Who knows? We'll see when it's useful, which is doubtful that it will be, but I'm going to enjoy every second of wearing it because it's so bright. And it has pockets, as you'll have seen, which I added. So the things that I've added to the pattern is the lining and the pockets. For both of those, I just followed simple tutorials that I found online. I'll try and link them. And then I didn't do the facing on the armhole because of it being lined. I still chose to do the facing down the front, just because I thought that would be a nice feature. And as you've seen in the longer video, the lining at the bottom isn't attached to the hem, so it just hangs quite nicely. So that's the coat. Now let's go to the wine. So, for the first episode, I thought we had to have a sparkling wine. It's not going to be a first celebration of anything without some sparkling. But on the theme of doing things a little bit differently, I wanted something that had a different story to it. So I went into one of my favourite wine stores and I spoke to the lovely attendant there, and he suggested this Yarra Valley 2017 Syrah Rosé, which is a Pet Nat. So for those of you who don't know, who aren't familiar with wine, a Pet Nat is just a type of sparkling wine. It's a French style, hence the French name, and it just means that it's a naturally sparkling wine. In this case, it's been made sparkling using the ancestral method. Basically, that method is quite similar to champagne. You do the first fermentation, then you chill the wine and pause the fermentation halfway through. It remains chilled for a few months, and then it is bottled again, and the second fermentation happens in the bottle. So it's not like Prosecco or something like that, like a cheaper sparkling wine that's fermented in a tank or that they pump CO2 into or anything. It's all done naturally, and it's believed to be one of the most traditional methods. In this case, I guess this would be classed as an orange wine. It's got that pink colour, so it's like wild fermentation. What does it say? Whole bunch pressed, wild barrel fermented, bottled before end of primary ferment, which is what I was just discussing. 12 months, full lees, hand disgorged à la volée. So lees as well, if you don't know what lees are, they're basically the kind of little dead bodies of the yeast, you can think of it that way. They add a lot of flavour. They add like a brioche kind of flavour to wine, so you'll often find that in like a champagne. And I love lees, for sure. So, this is the moment of truth. I am terrified of opening this bottle of wine because I'm terrified that the footage isn't going to be alright up until now and I'm not going to be able to redo it. So, wish me luck. I guess if you're watching this, it was good enough for me to open it, or I hope it is. It is by a winemaker called Tim Ward, who I know nothing about, but apparently this has a huge cult following, so we'll see. Alright. Also terrified about opening wine on camera. Like, I've been a waitress for years. You'd think I'd be used to opening wine in front of people, but just not ready for this. Okay. So that's one thing that I guess I'll point out for people who don't know. So this didn't have a cork. A lot of the natural wines don't. They have like the bottle caps. Doesn't mean anything. Corks aren't necessarily better. Okay. Probably a very generous tasting. I'm a little nervous on camera. Can you tell? So straight off, I think this is a good choice from the perspective of the colour. Like, this is a really colourful jacket, so colourful wine to match with the jacket. Let's give it a smell. Ooh. It smells kind of like rose petals. And there's that brioche, like sourdough, that'll be from the lees. Yeah, rose petals, strawberries, maybe like macerated strawberries, but there's just a hint of that. Brioche, sourdough, and like those strawberries and cream lollies that you get vaguely. I love this wine. I love the attendant that sold this wine to me. So when you're talking about a sparkling wine, you want to talk about how it feels in your mouth. In this case, it's really like a creamy kind of bubble. Like, it's not like having popping candy in your mouth. It's just like this gentle, creamy sort of fizz. It does taste still quite a lot like that kind of bready sourdough taste. Yeah. But there's quite a lot of strawberry there as well on the palate. Yeah. So one of the things about wines is that they can taste sweet, and people assume that there's sugar in the wine. I am not one of the sommeliers that can tell you this probably has 7 grams of residual sugar or whatever. Like, I've got no concept of that. But this one has a fruit sweetness to it, so it's like the fruit flavors are sweet without the wine being sweet. It's definitely not like a cloying sweet rosé. It's really dry, but it does have that fruitiness through it. What else can I tell you? It's definitely a good acidity there. I think probably the acidity is a bit masked by the creaminess of the texture and of the lees, but it's definitely refreshing without being overwhelmingly dry like a Provence rosé. So yeah, this is definitely what I wanted. It's like, it's an interesting sparkling wine. It's, you know, you're gonna notice it on the shelf. It's really pleasant. Yeah, I really like it. I'm so glad that I got this wine for the first episode. It's daunting to choose wine when you know that you're going to talk about it on camera, but that was a good choice, so thank you so much. I have entirely forgotten the name of the store that I bought this at because I don't look at the name when I go in there, but yeah, shout out to these guys. I'll link them in the description box down below, and hopefully there'll be something on screen now. And shout out to Tim Ward. That is a nice one. I also chose this because of the label. like colourful little label, colourful little coat slash vest. What more could you want? So thank you so much for watching the first episode of Sew Vino. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different. Please comment down below, let me know what you would like me to taste, what you'd like me to make, if you want more on what the sewing process was and what I did. And yeah, give me some feedback, guys. I'd love to hear your feedback. And please also note, obviously production of anything online is quite expensive in regards to cameras and microphones and other equipment. For Sew Vino to be able to purchase the wine and continue doing these reviews, it's really helpful if you support our Patreon page. We have a Patreon under Fern and Thread. I'll link it in the description box down below. If you become a patron, if you become a person that supports Fern and Thread, there will be other bonuses for you as well. You'll get a more active engagement with the channel and with our content, and hopefully for those of you in Australia, we might be able to do some wine related meetups which you might enjoy. Of course, there'll be something for any non-drinkers out there as well. Totally happy to support non-drinkers. So yeah, please support our Patreon page if you are able to, even just to give us a little bit of love and support what we're doing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching episode 1 of Sew Vino. I will see you back in the future for some episodes with some special guests, some special wines, and some special makes, of course. Please support us on our Patreon page, and thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys. Happy sewing.
Sew Vino.